Think about what a trailblazer he was on the golf course. Think about the fact that he was so good on the golf course as the world's number one, that he really, if you like, set the scene for many of those who came after him. Adam Scott, becoming the first Australian to win the Masters at Augusta last year. The very first person he thanked was Greg Norman. Think also about Greg Norman, if you like, as a brand. He was brilliant. His golf, well, he's in the Golf Hall of Fame. He won 2 major events himself, the British Opens, and then came so close in so many others. He should have been, I think, the first Australian to have won the Masters all those years back. But then go to the way in which he turned that sporting prowess into business. He became the first global brand. He turned that golfing genius into a business, and it is still successful today, even though he plays fewer golf tournaments. Well, now he's going to be the face of another household Australian brand, and that is Great Keppel Island. He's going to put his own imagination into that. And also, if you think about it, it's a Queenslander returning back to the place where he started to take up with another Queenslander in Great Keppel Island. And Greg Norman is on the line for us right now. Many thanks for your time. We appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you, Ross. It's great to be back home.
Look, here's the thing about this. I mean, right now, last year I think you played a few tournaments, a handful of tournaments. The previous year, the same thing. You really have now transformed your whole career into this business operation, isn't it? And I mean, the Great White Shark enterprises have been around for a long time, but it's that's almost been the passion for you as well as the sport over such a long period of time.
Well, absolutely. I looked at my golfing career on the golf course as the front nine of my life. Fortunately, Ross, I did pretty good at the game. Some people say I should have done better. Some people probably wish they had my career. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And so the front nine of my life was a tremendous learning experience. I loved playing the game of golf with a passion. I loved wearing my heart on my sleeve. I loved giving it back to the spectators and to the game of golf. And so I learned a lot. I understood what branding and marketing was all about because I got involved with so many iconic companies on a global basis, and I got to meet CEOs and, fortunately for me, leaders of nations. I was
going to ask that because there's all the pro-ams that go around. A lot of pro golfers go around the pro-ams and all that sort of stuff, and they make a really good living out of golf. But there must have been a few moments in your life when you were playing those pro-ams ahead of big tournaments, or you were actually out on corporate golf days, where something actually clicked in your brain that you could turn your career as a golfer, which clearly was where your whole life was headed, into something that was beyond that. Can you remember those moments?
Oh, I definitely remember those moments. It wasn't meeting an individual, it's understanding the position you're in. And how I came to that decision was that I put a lot of bums on seats. So I was actually being leveraged by other people to the success of golf tournaments. So what would happen is somebody would come and ask me to play an X tournament somewhere in the world for 3 of the next 4 years. I'd sign up, I'd get an appearance fee. Then that individual, that company would go and sell the TV rights, go sell the corporate dollars. So all of a sudden, just by locking in an individual and a few other players, they're locking in their marketability going forward. And I actually sat back one time and said, I want a piece of the gate money. Yes, appearance money is great, but at the end of the day, you're leveraging off my name and my playability. So being an independent contractor, I figured, okay, there was an opportunity here. Obviously, you get nowhere, even to the tune where with our name and likeness on the PGA Tour, I wanted to have own my image for the Internet. Different with press and being a member of the PGA Tour. I get that, understand that. But just like residuals of an actor or actress or a singer, they get residuals for every song played. I wanted to get some residuals for every time a golf tournament was played that I was in or something like that. So I was the guy who opened up the eyes to that, and I wanted to capitalize on that, and that opened me up to a whole plethora of new things in the business world. And I said, okay, let's go and see if we can seize it. How do we seize it? I decided to capitalize my business on my own And so in 1992, 93, that's where it all started, Ross.
So in other words, you're almost able to split yourself into two. Greg Norman, the golf player, who clearly had to continue to perform to keep the brand alive and keep the brand well. And then Greg Norman, the brand and the image, who was able to then leverage off Greg Norman, the golfer, and really try and create a long-term and sustainable business, which clearly has happened.
Absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head. And now I become the living brand. But even more important to now, to this date, is the ability to be able to sit down with head of state or a CEO of a company or a head potential investors into different possible developments around the world. It's really meaningful because, quite honestly, Ross, my business, and specifically my golf course design business, is an economic indicator. And what I mean by that is when everything's flying high and everybody's over leveraged and you think you have an unlimited budget, people are building golf courses left, right, and center. As soon as there's a recession on the horizon, like in 2007, 2008, our account receivables going out because everybody's starting to tuck their wings in. Now we're seeing it in different regions around the world where we get the phone call because people like Great Keppel Island. 7 years ago, I got a call from Tower Holdings. Hey, would you like to build a golf course on Great Keppel Island? So because they were ready to invest dollars. So golf courses become an amenity to a facility. So we are normally the first ones to get the phone call before the development even kicks off. So we know where these regions of the world are starting to grow, starting to develop, because investment capital is being spent to develop these resorts or develop, residential communities. So that's why I say my golf course design business is an economic indicator.
It's a brilliant economic indicator as well. Tell me a bit about Great Keppel. I mean, Australians all know Great Keppel. It's been a terrific island and a terrific destination for many, many years. But the truth is this is going to take it beyond that. In terms of your own business as well, is it that you simply come in there as a contractor, do the work you need to, do the branding you need to, or do you try and take a slice of this on the way through?
All of the above, Ross, all of the above. I'm a very, very proud Queenslander. I'm a very, very proud Aussie. And look, I've traveled the world, and I've seen some of the greatest iconic island destinations in the world. I've built golf courses on some great iconic island destinations in the Caribbean, in Mexico, in Yucatan Peninsula. All over the world we get asked to build golf courses. So when I come back home, and I look at what we have sitting on Great Keppel Island, or look what we have in this country, I just sit back and go, wow, when was the last five-star luxury, eco-friendly golf resort or development done in Australia? I bet it's 25 years, 30 years.
It would have been the Japanese building them in those days, wouldn't it?
It would have been go back to the mid-'80s. The Japanese came in, right? And so now here's an opportunity for Aussies to step up to the plate and build like I said, an eco-luxury resort development on the World Heritage listed site, and create something that can never be created before in the future or before. So now all of a sudden, Australia is putting itself back on the tourism map, giving a destination for people to come into, and more importantly, Ross, and this is the most important thing I think, for the domestic Aussies, for the Aussies to have a great place to go. And yes, Australia's got many, many great destinations to go to, but when you start thinking about building a five-star eco-luxury resort from scratch on the Great Barrier Reef, it's something that every Australian should sit back and say, boy, I want to go there, and I want my children to grow up with that opportunity.
There's no doubt, and that's one thing that the tourism authorities have said for a long time, that Australia needs more of these types of resorts coming through. Just a little one. I mean, we talked about the transition from the golf into the business and how the business really was able to become, self-sustaining in many ways. Tell me about the current crop of golfers. Say, for example, Tiger Woods, withdrawn from the Masters next week. People are now raising some questions about his age. At what age do you reckon is the period at which a golfer generally peaks and needs to be looking beyond their golf career?
Well, that's a great question. I recognized when early on that when I was starting to get around 40, late 30s, early 40s, I wanted to find that back nine in my life. So I started at a very early age thinking, okay, when I start playing, and I didn't want to be a ceremonial golfer. I didn't want to go out there to play golf 2 rounds, miss the cut, and go home. I had made a very conscious decision to think about my future. Look, I've had great conversations with Adam Scott at a very, very young age. He was starting to think about where he will be when he's 40, mid-40s. So he's way ahead of the game on most other professional golfers. As for Tiger, it depends on what you want. He has injuries now. Those injuries come because he is one of the great players of the world. To be one of the great players of the world, you put a lot of stress on your body from a lot of practice. So that was a kind of a given. If you look over the history of the game of golf, every power player, a guy who just hits the ball a long way and who has been at the top of the heap, we've all had surgeries. We've all had back surgeries or shoulder surgeries or hip surgeries or whatever it is, because the game of golf is brutal. It's a very unnatural motion. And the more power you put into it, the more speed you put into it, the more stress gets put on the smaller joints, like your lower back, your facets, like your knee and your shoulder joints. And so all of a sudden you start paying the price after hitting 4.5 million golf balls that I figured I've hit.
4.5 million golf balls. Not that many shots per round, however, I'd have to say, which is a great thing. Greg Norman, as I say, not only the face of this revival of Great Keppel Island and the ambassador for the company that's redeveloping it, that is Tower Holdings, but also, of course, the man himself behind the Great White Shark Enterprises and one of our great ambassadors, but also one of our greatest golfers ever. Greg Norman, we appreciate your time.
Ross, thank you very much, and good luck to you, buddy. You've got a great show.